Hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining in, Dr. Judy, WTF, What the Freud. And this topic, again, it's a pretty heavy one, and I'll announce the topic. I'm sure you're reading about it also. Mental abuse by parents in high conflict divorce and recovery from the effects on children. So, as you know, I'm very, very passionate about the next generation and not passing on multi-generational wounds from parents to child. And I'm going to be talking about what happens in these really high conflict situations where parents don't get along. Philosophically, they're not even aligned, and the kids are stuck in the middle. So this is a call-in show, everybody, and please feel free to call in, and I'll be happy to field questions and mind map and really present this topic from a mind map perspective of childhood wounds and their reactions and encodings. And thank you so much for putting the mind map up there. And so just from simply a mind map point of view, people tend to do what I call a WTF. They repeat old patterns from the family and multi-generations of family, which simply means that we copycat the problems from generations and generations ago, and it trickles down to this generation, and then we bear the burden and our children bear the burden. And sometimes what happens is we pair with partners that are not going to be sustainable in a marital or long-term situation. And then these partners have to split up or decide to split up. And who suffers? The children. Really, everyone does, but the children in particular, because let's not forget that children are made up of the DNA of their father and the DNA of their mother, or for people who aren't DNA blueprinted, primary, secondary caregivers. It doesn't really matter. We're talking about the psychological blueprint that children experience from one parent and another parent, and how that lands in the psyche, and what happens when those parents are not aligned. So let's at least mind map that part of it. So if you could put the mind map back up there, and I'm going to talk a little bit about childhood wounds, which I concentrate on 5 of: physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, emotional, physical neglect, and smothering. So let's just say that 2 unhealed parents come together, and as a result of their union, both of them maybe not healthy, maybe both of them didn't really do the work necessary to be healthy parents to begin with. And now they get together, and unfortunately, they play out their pathology on each other. And so they're in a reactive form, and these reactions can include anything from yelling and screaming and projecting all over each other. And then sometimes these projections and feelings of anger get projected on the children. And then what happens? The children are feeling it directly, and then they're feeling it indirectly because they're watching their parents fight. And at the end of that road, this bond, I'll just call it a toxic bond, is formed between the parents, and the children cannot really properly be supported by such a bond. So if we look at panel number 3, you can see that panel 3 has 2 strands of DNA. So let's just, for convenience sake, call the yellowish, pinkish, orangish one the female energy, and the greenish, bluish, purplish one the male energy. And these 2 bonds come together, but neither strand is particularly evolved or healthy. And now they're trying to form this life, this structure, and upon which the children are supposed to feel that they have a ladder to climb, a secure ladder to climb. Now, if the union is not stable, if the union is toxic, and if the union breaks, let's move to panel 4 so that you can see what happens. So if we move to panel 4, you can see that these toxic bonds are not sustainable. And you can see the toxic haze in the background, which is really a metaphor for all the poisonous environmental stressors of the family. And now the children, those little people swirling and hurling off in space, are just doing that. They're swirling and hurling off into space, and they have no structure, they have no sense of security, they don't have a sense of where they belong. And so they're in trouble. They're really in trouble because they don't know who to hang on to. So let's just say that the weekend comes and now they're with mom, and there are a whole set of rules that go along with mom's household. And those sets of rules don't match dad's household. And so, what happens with that child when on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're supposed to follow a certain structure, certain sleep schedule, homework schedule, certain philosophies, certain belief systems, and they're told certain religious views or political views or any kind of views. And then they go to dad's house, and guess what? Opposite. Okay. And it might even be as subtle as in one family, they don't like dogs. In another family, they do like dogs. In one family, they're vegetarians. In another family, they're meat eaters. And so, being that a child wants to please and a child wants to feel secure with the bond of the parent, they will want to do what the parents want them to do. But how is the child supposed to hold in his or her head what to do if the rules keep switching? And worse, and this is where the mental health is really compensated when there's mental abuse of the child. And what do I mean by that in this specific case? I'll give you examples, real live examples that I've seen and heard, and they're really heartbreaking. Like, for example, honey, if you love meat, then I hate you because you're eating animals. And if at daddy's house you're eating animals and at mommy's house you're not eating animals, you're a bad person and you better let me know if you're eating animals, because if you are, you're being punished. Now, I happen to be a vegetarian, so I chose not to eat animals. I happen to be actually pescatarian, but you get the point that the kid doesn't know what to do with this information. And pretty soon, the parents, if they're really exhibiting very abusive traits, will say something like, if I catch you, or if I find out that you did this and this and that at daddy's house, which is against the rules, in mommy's house, you will be punished and your toys will be removed. And this bleeds into religious abuse, and it gets really, really nasty and very, very sticky when two families practice religion in different ways. Or let's say one practices religion and the other one doesn't, and the child is grilled in terms of, what did you do at mommy's house, or what did you do at daddy's house? Did you say your prayers at night? Did you go to church? Did you go to synagogue? Did you do your Hail Marys, or did you eat your kosher meals, or did you honor Shabbat? And this goes on and on cross-culturally. So what's a child supposed to do when there's no alignment? And this is a call-in show, everybody. So I do hope that you call in, because it's
Dr.
really,
Judy,
really a challenging dynamics, especially for the children. Is there a call-in?
Dr. Judy, we have a call.
Okay, thanks for calling in. You are on the couch. And what is your name, please?
Hi, my name is Cody.
Cody, thank you so much for calling in. And what the Freud is attracting you to this particular topic?
I will say I've been a long-time listener of all of the stuff you have to say, and it really resonates with me deeply. Okay. And this particular topic was really fascinating that it came up, because I'm just now delving in through therapy my issues with a very destructive parental unit. Both of my parents, they divorced when I was around 12 years old.
Okay.
And it was a very corrosive and angry relationship, like you described a lot of fighting, a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling, a lot of incidents as a young child.
Yes.
And it led to, after the divorce, I think I became sort of a parentified child for my mother.
Not uncommon, by the way. Okay. And for those of you who don't know what a parentified child is, I'll define that. That's when the mother befriends their little boy or girl, and that person is more of a confidant, advice giver, and steals the childhood. Is that what you experienced?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know that I have a specific question, except that as I continue on through adulthood, I'm 33 now, and I was, just a child when all this stuff went down, and I'm now trying to reconcile it in a large part,
So let me ask you this, and specifically, I'm talking now about philosophical, religious, cultural differences, differences in politics, differences in lifestyle, and so on and so forth. Did you see that there was a big gap between your mother and your father in these regards?
I did, and I think they weren't so. Both households were very secular, and there wasn't like a large religious influence in either house. But I did notice strongly that I had these two separate units, just like you're describing, these two separate houses that were very at odds with each other. And my dad's house was much looser and much more hippie-ish. And my mom was very autocratic and wanted good grades, wanted this and that. And basically it sort of boiled down to I felt free in one house and kind of imprisoned in the other.
Yeah, and then I bet you, because I've seen this happen, that when you got to your father's house, he was the hippie one, right? Yeah?
Yep.
So you took full advantage. So it was a real imbalance. So in other words, at your father's house, I kind of already feel bad for him, because probably he was taking the brunt of, well, let's be free. Let's just use the cell phone anytime I want, and let's just not do the homework, and not take a shower, and not brush my teeth, even though he probably had some requirements. I'm sure there was a rebound effect, in the sense that you wanted to take a break from all of that prison or situation that you had in your mother's house. Is that pretty much on target?
That's on target for sure. And I think the interesting part too is like my mom chose to almost weaponize me like a spy or something for the dad's household.
Yes. Okay. And I want to address this, because this is commonly brought up in litigious situations where one parent wants more rights to the children, and they'll send their kids in as a little spy, and they'll have the child report back, and then frame the parent. Does daddy drink? Does he have other partners come and go from the apartment? What's mommy doing? Is she dating several partners? What about mommy? Is she talking behind daddy's back? And so they will carefully set the children up as pawns to be their little spies, and then report back, and then, of course, take this information to their attorney, and then try to position themselves to have more custodial rights and so on. Yes, yes. And was this the case in your case?
Absolutely. Yes. And even,
Boy.
I felt like I felt empowered by the role too, which is a weird sort of fascinating dysfunction that went along with it. I felt like proud that I was reporting back to her these things, and pleasing the mother figure. But then later in life felt very violated by it.
Well, was your mother the main tie, would you say? Were you most bonded to her?
Yeah, she received sole custody, after the divorce, and I spent most of my time with her. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Did she receive sole custody because, she gathered is that what you're saying, that she was gathering evidence and partly through you to make her case to receive sole custody?
It's possible. I think a lot of those issues did result in dad's drug use, and he
Mhm.
wasn't able to test properly on the custodial drug testing and things. I don't know for sure if my information contributed to that, but that was a big part of why he didn't receive a joint custody, you know?
I mean, look, sometimes parents should not be given the privilege to parent, especially if they're so compromised by drugs and alcohol or compromised by their own mental health issues to the point where they cannot mirror and attune to the child and be there for basic things like meals and getting them to school on time and helping out with homework and so on and so forth. So this is case by case basis, right? Um, what's so sad is what happens to the child in the middle of all of this chaos. What happens, and children are not particularly great at defending themselves because their defenses are they're unevolved, and so they'll resort to shutting down. They'll resort to video games and watching endless television or Netflix or whatever they're doing, zoning out. And sometimes the breakdown results in deep levels of depression, anxiety, and then levels of depression and sleep disturbances and also psychosomatic pain. A lot of these children end up in the hospital with stomach aches and so on because the defenses are blowing. Okay, they don't hold. And of course,
If I could just interrupt you for 1 second, because that is literally insane that you're saying that. I can completely resonate with that. I had this very insane psychosomatic issue happen when I was a child, when I was around the same age, 10, 12, and I would get this intense gut tension, this pinching in my stomach that
yes,
would escalate to the point of literally vomiting.
yeah,
And I went to the doctor. They thought it was my appendix. They thought it was this or that.
sure.
They couldn't find any medical reason for this occurrence, and
Of
it
course.
just went down as a stress thing.
Absolutely. And you know what's really sad? And, by the way, audience, did not plan to know all of this information. It's not like Cody and I talked before the show. So it's just that this is such a common occurrence that I can predict this stuff because I've obviously worked with so many people and also I've lived life and have had members of my own family who've experienced this kind of dynamics and pain. And so what occurs is that the child, Alice Miller, bless Alice Miller, Drama of the Gifted Child, she said it best. Children would rather be the bad ones in a good world than the good ones in a bad world, meaning that they'll make themselves sick before they will acknowledge that there's something wrong with the parents. And speaking about your psychosomatic illness, right? Um,
Mhm.
Oftentimes, the worst case scenarios are when parents even deny that this is stress from the divorce. They'll just say something like, no, 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 he's fine. She's fine. She's probably just having stomach aches. Maybe she ate something that was off, or maybe he's stressing because of his homework, or maybe this, but they never own their own stuff. And for those of you who haven't seen my video on parents own your own stuff, it's really quite a traumatic video, I'm warning you. But you might want to watch it for the concept of it. Parents, own your own stuff. And that's part of the recovery to helping your child heal is when mommy or daddy says, little Johnny or little Mary, you have a stomach ache because mommy and daddy are not on the same page and you're being smashed in the middle. At least there's some acknowledgement there.
Yeah, and I think that the way my mom reacted is similar to what you said. Like maybe it's just this one time, but when it happened 2, 3, 4 times at that point, I think she did start to own it. She got a little scared and didn't quite realize her. I think she owned it slightly, but not completely.
Not completely. So at that point, when children keep visiting the hospital and the doctor, oftentimes Child Protective Services steps in, social workers step in, and then hopefully they have a talk with the family and try to get them on the same page. So Cody, you have been absolutely living this nightmare, and did they come to? Was there any sort of reparation through later discussion, or did they ever open their eyes and say, wow, our child is really suffering. We better have a talk. We better take the pressure off of the poor little guy and get on somewhat of the same page. Did that ever happen for you?
Well, it might have behind maybe closed doors and not in a way that was immediately obvious to me.
Okay.
But I would say that as life went on, it never got so extreme, like you mentioned, child services and things like that. I know that they were confused by my reaction. And at one point I did go to a psychologist at a very young age. I went to one session and I think I was 12 or something, 12, 13, around the same time, after this was all happening. I didn't know what was wrong with me.
And I'm just curious if the therapist questioned you about your childhood wounds and what was going on in the family.
He didn't. It was very topical, and he ended up kind of explaining. He had a chalkboard, and he drew a bell curve on the chalkboard, and he basically told me that, like, I am part of this, like, the narrow, smaller part of the bell curve, and everyone else is part of this larger portion, as this diagram that he was showing me on the board. That's the only thing that I remember from it. I don't even know what the point was with that or why he said that. It's the one thing that stuck with me from it, and it like inflated my ego at the time. I don't really know what the point of it was.
Okay. I mean, I may be reading into it. And of course, I don't know the situation, nor do I know this particular doctor. But it seems like he was trying to say something like, a few children do have stomach aches, and maybe you're just one of the outliers, and you do, and most children don't. And that's the way it is for you, which, as you said, is a very topical way to approach it. Because as a systems theory thinker, I look at the big picture. And so I think one of the problems with a lot of the therapy that doesn't address the cause is that they address the symptom and they ignore the cause. And we've got to connect the two, because remember, from a mind map perspective, wounds of childhood lead to reactions, which lead to poor encoding, which lead to chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And so if you don't think systems, you're just going to pick on the symptom and teach little Johnny or little Cody or little Mary or little whoever to deep breathe and meditate, which is not a bad thing to learn. It's just that it's not putting things in a causal perspective. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you calling in and for being an avid listener and learning this, because I think that the more you can connect the dots, the better and clearer your mind will work, and the less you will blame yourself and shame yourself for the symptoms and the chaos that surround you. So I really appreciate you calling in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everything you do. Thank you for taking the call as well.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit more about what goes on internally inside the child. So here's the child trying to glue this family together, at least in his or her mind. So we've got mom and the dad, we've got one DNA and the other DNA, and literally they're trying to make sense of the two. And this creates tremendous cognitive dissonance, which means that they don't know how to bring these things together. So mommy says, don't eat me. Daddy says, eat me. Mommy says, go to church. Daddy says, don't go to church. Mommy says, pray 4 times a day. Daddy says, that's nonsense. Mommy says, I hate animals. Daddy says, animals are beautiful. And they're just like, they're about to blow up. Seriously. And I see this on a regular basis, and the children really, really, really take the hit. So what are they supposed to do in their minds? And if they're very, very lucky, they have an enlightened witness, like a teacher or an aunt or a grandmother or a grandfather that straightens out their thinking. And this helps tremendously. All you need is one enlightened witness to say, this is not your fault. And I could see how this is stressing you out. And I understand that your stomach ache is because you don't know what to do with this in your head. You have no idea how to keep from feeling that you're betraying mommy when you're at daddy's house, and betraying daddy when you're at daddy's house. And so what I want to say to you is, let's keep it as simple as possible. So when you're at mommy's house, why don't you just follow mommy's rules, unless they're a danger to yourself or others. When you're at daddy's house, just go by daddy's rules. So when mommy asks you questions about daddy, you can say something like, mommy, when I'm at daddy's house, I follow daddy's rules, and really, I don't really want to talk about daddy's house because that's my time with daddy, and vice versa.
Judy, we have another call.
And so I don't think children have the languaging to speak this way because nobody taught them so. And please call in, because this is such an important topic. And
Dr.
parents,
Judy,
if
you
you're
have another
watching
call?
and you have this conflict going on, and that you see that your children are literally imploding or exploding, and they'll act out, they'll act in, meaning they'll get depressed, and then they'll eventually start exploring defense mechanisms against all the crazy by drugs, sex, rock and roll. And depending on what age they are, little babies may not exactly verbally know what's going on, but pre-verbally they're soaking in all of these negative imprints and negative pre-verbal messages. And then when they become more cognitive, then they're interpreting their world in terms of panel 3 negative core beliefs. And these negative core beliefs might sound something like, I'm a bad person and I'm going to go to hell because I didn't do my Bible studies. Or I'm a horrible person because I love my daddy and my mommy says that my daddy is a horrible person, so I'm betraying mommy by loving daddy. And can you see how this can literally blow up a kid's mind? And I want to refer you to, first of all, if you need help, please access 24-hour help. I've got the free download of the book, and you can call and book for free consultation. And we have a beautiful staff of people who are here to help you and to align you, and also help you with your parenting style so that you can get on the same family page, even if you are divorced, separated. And that doesn't mean that you have to go with the philosophy of the other person. It just does mean that you have to put your children number one. And over again, I describe narcissism as a system gone wrong, where the parents put their own needs, their own feelings, their own belief systems before the best interest of the child. And this is where the child gets smashed. One little boy said to me something like, I feel that daddy is one big continent and mommy's another big continent. I'm just this little tiny continent, and I'm being smashed in the middle. And that pretty much sums it up. And this particular boy had massive stomach aches. and massive guilt about what he was going to do if he's at daddy's house and mom's going to grill him about what did you eat? What did you do? Did you pray? Did you go to the house of worship and so on and so forth? And then it creates reverberations, of course, if there are brothers and sisters and so on, that they'll feel the effects, and we are all interconnected. So there's no way for a part of the system to be off centered and not have it reverberate on other aspects of the system. And of course, it does bleed out into the court system. So this is where a lot of these battles are ultimately ending up in, and custody battles and so on and so forth. And then there's even more of a schism for the child, because now legally they may be taken away and their routine is disrupted. Which brings me back to John Bowlby. What does it take to form a healthy human psyche? It's consistency. Okay, it's all the emotional nutrients that we as humans need. We need to be attuned to, we need to be mirrored as babies. Ideally, be nice if mom breastfed the baby, and attuned to the baby in terms of their needs for food and sleep and diapering and so on. And that's how we develop a healthy brain. Neurologically, we need to be stimulated and reflected back. And it's an outside in model whereby the baby is looking into the parent's eyes to self define. So if the mother's looking away or the father's busy on the cell phone and preoccupied, what's the baby or the child encoding? I'm not important. I'm not being heard. I'm not seen. I'm a nuisance. I'm a burden, and so on. And that's where we get these horrible negative core beliefs that follow us into the later part of life. I have people coming to therapy who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're sitting here in my office with they're very successful even, sitting in my office with core beliefs like, I'm a loser, or I'm a curse, or I should never have been born, or I will never be lovable. And this is because, as I explained to them, there's a difference between logic. Logically, they know this is not true. It's just that these messages go really, really deep inside the core of the psyche. And I refer to them as
We have a call,
psychoviruses. And
Dr. Judy.
so, do we have a call?
We sure do.
Thank you. Okay. Hey, what's your name, please? And where are you calling from? And thank you for calling in.
Hi, my name is Amy.
Hi, Amy. Welcome to the show. And where are you calling from, Amy?
I'm California.
Okay. Okay. And what are your thoughts about this topic, and how are you relating to this particular topic?
Well, I'm calling because I was involved in a high conflict divorce for several years.
Okay.
And my son was never exposed to any verbal arguing. There was no physical abuse or anything. But after the divorce, I found out that this person, through other psychologists reading different letters and everything else, was a narcissist/sociopath,
Okay.
or had traits of.
You mean your ex? Yes.
Yes, the ex. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never knew about these pathological issues, or saw anything. There were some red flags of anger when things occurred, but because of his career and my career, we basically lived opposite times. Mm-hmm. And my son really bonded a lot with me because, my ex was out of the home for a good amount of time.
Yeah, I just want to back up for one minute, because I know people, sure, they always say, oh my God, that term is thrown around so loosely, psychopath, the narcissist, and
yes,
so on. So I just want to define it a little bit clearer so people understand.
Sure.
There's a difference between narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic traits. And again, I'm not so much looking at it from the point of view of the label. I'm looking at it as a
Sure.
system gone wrong. The parent
Yeah.
lacks empathy. Okay, they prefer power and
Yep.
control over connection and
Yep.
yeah, and empathy. And the person
Yep.
basically has hardened their heart, so they don't
Hmm.
feel. They don't have the capacity to step into your shoes or a child's shoes or really anybody's
Hmm.
shoes. And the
Right.
self-interest is just that. It's all about the self. And there's not much
Correct.
thinking. And then the sociopathy is when the heart hardens even more. And then doesn't matter if I shoot you, kill you, rob you, stab you, whatever it is that I do, it doesn't hurt me. So, I can't relate
Mhm.
to it.
Yeah,
So is that what you're talking about? Are we in the right realm here of
it
definition?
is.
Okay.
There's a lot of there was a lot of coercive control financially, and there's a lot of um, power and control as far as like my way, one way thinking, it's all bad or all good,
Okay.
or it revolves around my schedule because I'm special, and not yours.
Yes.
It doesn't have anything to do with the child.
Yes.
Um, and right when the divorce happened, my son was never separated from me before, except for maybe, 2 days when he'd have to go on a business trip.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
all of a sudden, every exchange, he would start throwing up and having headaches. He was
How old?
refusing to
How
do
old was
exchanges.
it? How old?
7.
Yeah.
7 was when we started.
Mhm,
And then he would go to his father's, and his father would say stuff. Well, his father didn't pay support, child support or spousal support
mhm,
for 6 months.
mhm,
And during that time, he would say, if your mom doesn't buy you things, she doesn't love you. If your
mhm,
grandparents don't buy you things, they don't love you.
mhm.
He would make a lot of disparaging remarks about me, and my son would get very upset and come back and basically be in tears. Um, and, I've always said, like, I'm really sorry, like, mommy and daddy are going through some stuff right now. And,
Mhm.
we both love you. And I'd always try to, like, just reassure him.
Very smart.
And,
Very smart. Yeah.
I never wanted to be that for him. I want to be the support for him, knowing that, he has a place to go, and just continue to give him love.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, through this phase, um, my question is, a lot of professionals did not see the amount of abuse that was happening
Right. 'Cause they
with
weren't
my
bruises.
son.
They weren't bruises. Correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't think that he felt comfortable because of his age. And when he was doing therapy, they would only spend 15 minutes with him.
Mhm.
And my ex would always say a lot of disparaging things to me about to his therapist. And then
Mhm.
his therapist really would continuously say for years that he was fine and there was no problems, to the point where my son was like, I want this pattern to stop. I want him to stop saying disparaging things about my mom. I want him to stop
Oh, he said
force
that?
feeding me. Yeah, he
Wow.
did.
Wow.
And he also said that I want my father to stop force feeding me to the point where I'm throwing up.
Mhm.
Because when he says he doesn't want to eat, his dad forces him to eat. And then he'll have a stomach and feel ill. And then he'll ask him, like, what's wrong? And then my son will say, I feel sick. And he goes, because you ate too much? And he'll say, yes. And he goes, you're fine. You're not sick. So then he, like, kind of gaslights him.
Yeah. You know,
Um,
this is the
yeah,
saddest thing for a mother
yeah.
or the other parent to watch, because there's not much
Mhm.
you can do about it. You can't go to the courts and
Yeah.
say, "Wow, my son is being
Mm-mm.
destroyed," because they're going to say, "Well, there's not enough evidence, and as long as you're within the realm
Yeah.
of competent parents, you will have more or less equal visitation rights." So again, back to
Mhm.
no bruises, and it is legal in the state of California,
Yeah.
by the way, to hit your child. It's
Yeah.
legal.
He doesn't physically harm him. A lot of it is emotional abuse. He calls him names. He disparages him and speaks to him in a very demeaning manner. He's to the point where he says he doesn't want to be there. He even went to his pediatrician and told his pediatrician
Good.
that his father doesn't treat him good, that he calls him names, that when he tells him that he's sick, he tells him he's fine. When he feeds him foods he's allergic to, and he tells him that he's not allergic to it, and he has like physical ailments of stomach cramps for 12 hours because of the food that he ate.
Well, what does the pediatrician do?
The pediatrician didn't do anything. He just says, you can talk to me, to my son anytime. And he told me that he was in a toxic environment and that as long as he has one healthy parent, he should be okay. But he didn't do anything else. And so now my son doesn't even feel comfortable talking to him. And, you know, things have kind of escalated, and CPS is now involved. But my concern is he's very charismatic. There's a side of him that's very charismatic. It's very like aggressive if he's kind of cornered and accused. And like in work one time he was brought up on harassment charges, and he told the people during the investigation that that didn't happen, and I swear on my son's life it didn't happen. And so, I mean, he'll go to the extreme of swearing on his son's life when he's being accused of something just to get out of it. So people think like he's just passionate.
How old is your son now?
He's now 10.
Okay. And you said something earlier that all it takes is one parent. Well, you know, it makes a huge difference who you're being to him, which is the voice of reason, which is you're the person you go to, you're the person who can make some sense of it. And so, you know, part of my intention for this show is to help with recovery. So let's just do that. Okay. So number one, be that person who's safe for your son. Reflect his reality. If he says, Mommy, I have a stomach ache, Daddy's stuffing you with food, what can you do about that, right? Like, how horrible. Let's try to get some help for you about that, or let's try to talk to social services about that. And you know, I'm not really sure they'll do much about that. That's the sad part, is there's a feeling of helplessness, right? You cry out for help, and he's in a hostage situation, and he's probably feeling that you're not doing enough. Come on, mommy. I don't want to get stuffed like this. And you're doing the best that you can. And so there's another show that I really want to direct people toward. It's called The ABCs of Resentment. And again, pick up that copy of my PDF, and 24/7 you can do it, call for help. And the ABCs of resentment goes something like this, and I'll apply it to your family. So once upon a time, A, your ex, and B, you, and your son, C, you were one unit. Okay? So we've got A, B, C. And then A and B split. They snapped the connection. So now C, your son, is going to feel something if A is going to have feelings toward your son if C likes B, which is you, and vice versa. Okay, so this is that split loyalty thing. Like, how dare you love somebody that hates me? How dare you? Okay, this is where it gets so horrible, because children are entitled to love who they love. Okay, they're also entitled to clarity of the brain. And so one of my favorite things to do is to tell stories to children, and the stories involve principles over people. Like, I'll try to make one up. I don't know if this is going to fly. Once upon a time, there was a mommy and a daddy, and the mommy and the daddy didn't get along, And the little boy was really devastated and he didn't know which parent to love. And mommy said, "You better hate daddy because he's a bad man." And daddy said, "You better hate mommy because
Mhm.
she's a bad lady." And he was just
Mhm.
didn't know what to do. And then came
Mhm.
this little light. It was the fairy light. And the fairy light said, "Don't worry, little boy. You have your own mind and your own heart, and you get to love whoever you want to. And that's okay.
Mhm.
You get to have your mind. And if what your mommy does you don't think is nice or good, that's your opinion. You get to have your opinion." So through little stories,
Mhm.
you can make them up on the spot. I make them up on the spot all
Yeah.
the time. You can convey lots and lots of messages without vilifying
Mhm.
anyone and straighten out their
Right.
little mind. Okay, does that help a little bit?
Yeah. It does. I guess my other question is, because anything I say or do, he says the opposite.
Yes.
How do you communicate, or how do you work together in the best interest of the child if somebody is constantly at opposite of everything you say? Like, he ate this, he had a reaction, I haven't seen reactions. Or, he wants to go to the school, no, he's not going to go to that school. Or he wants, you know what I mean? It's like no matter what I do or say, it's the opposite.
Yeah, so some people are oppositionally defiant, and if you call red blue,
Uh-huh.
you'll call it blue, okay? And so there's nothing
Right.
that you can do. And with regards to your son, all you could say is, "What are you seeing here?" "Well, I'm seeing red, daddy's seeing blue. What do you think?" And he'll say, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm seeing this." "Oh, okay.
Mhm.
You have a mind, you have eyes, and your perspective." So I wouldn't try to fight this, okay? Because um,
Yeah.
resistance does create persistence sometimes. And when you go
Right.
up against this defense mechanism, this ugly kind of passive aggressive, um, acting out kind of denying reality thing, you don't want to get involved.
Right.
You just want to stay with, "What are you seeing?" "I'm seeing this." "What are you seeing?" "Well, I'm seeing that." And you don't have to cross the line into trying to correct his stuff. Just keep out of it.
Right. And so what else can I do for my son to make sure? Because I try my hardest about not allowing him to see any of this. It's all behind the curtains, except for, like, if, obviously if he's kind of purging, and telling me stuff, and I just kind of listen.
Yeah.
Um, but
Um,
what else can I do to help him?
tell him that one day he's going to be a big man and he will
Mhm.
have a lot more power, and he's 10 years old, and then pretty soon he'll be teenager and driving and so forth. And I think give
Mhm.
some hope that one day he will, you don't have to use the word hostage situation, but he is in a hostage
Yeah.
situation. But one day he will be a big man. And the most important thing is that he stay healthy. And I think also redirect him to hobbies if he's into taekwondo or any
Yeah.
form of martial arts that would really empower him. And I would just
Yeah.
fill his life not with all the mess, but with all the beauty of
Yeah.
books and
Other things.
friendships. And I think at 10, they're more interested in their friends than their families anyway. They want
Yeah.
to play games and so on. And so I would keep his eye on the ball of the outside circle and education and hobbies,
Mhm.
sports, and so on, and just get him through it. And if he's breaking down, then you might even interpret it back to him and say, "Honey, let me ask you something. Did daddy stuff you with food?" "Yes, he did." That's not healthy. And I really, breaks mommy's heart that I can't do more about it. And um,
Yeah.
you could talk to your teacher again, or maybe you can reach out to your therapist again, or maybe you could just
Yeah.
go to the bathroom and spit the food out, or anything that you could do to help. But it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking that you can't do more. Heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I had one more last question, but
Sure.
I think I lost it. The last question is, based on the cycle, because my ex, his grandfather had this problem, his father had this problem, now he's having this problem. What is like a cycle that, my son potentially might have the same problem as all the males in his family, when he's saying right now, like, I don't want to be like them. I'm going to make different choices when I grow up. I'm going to be a different daddy. Like, these are things that he just says on his own.
Well, I would show them the mind map. I really would. And children understand it. My
Mm,
grandson broke it down when
yeah.
he was 4 years old, and that mind map video series that's out there called the 9 panel mind map video series.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
available, and in it is also a little section where my grandson breaks down the mind map, and you could show it to him. Say, look, people
Okay.
repeat these patterns. And the way Alexander, my grandson, broke it down, he says, Grandma, panel one is the boo boo. That's where all the childhood
Mhm.
wounds. And then panel two is the boo boo hurts. And then panel three is where you think you're a bad person because the parents blame you and accuse you and make you
Mhm.
feel like you're not important or not lovable. And then panel four is everybody's going crazy because you don't know what's up.
Mhm.
And panel five is everybody's pushing each other away. Those are the defenses.
Mhm.
And then panel six is where there's all this fighting. Everybody doesn't get along, they're fighting. And then in seven, which is the paradigm shift, there's this everybody's getting along. And then in eight, it's
Mhm.
teamwork. And then nine is peace. And so you can explain
Yeah.
to your son that people repeat patterns, and as long as he can think straight and discuss things and trust his mind and go to people that he trusts so that he can clear his mind, then he won't be
Yeah.
repeating things. Okay, the healthier he
Yeah.
is, the less he will repeat things, and reassure him of that.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate your advice and your help in your show.
You're very, very welcome. My pleasure. And I hope parents listening are learning something. And if you are in a high conflict situation and you want to hold your position of your cultural rules and norms or your religious, and I understand people have different cultures and religions and belief systems, but please, please, please put your children first, okay? Mental health over norms and rules and so on, because without mental health, we have children breaking down and defending with drugs, sex, rock and roll, and then sometimes even offing themselves, suicide. So this is serious business. And so remember that the more you can create some semblance of being on the same page or agreeing to disagree, or in an ideal circumstance say something to your child like, daddy and mommy are really, really different. We even practice different religions, we have different beliefs, we have different politics, we have different this and that, but everyone is different. And so when you're at daddy's house, that's what you're learning about, and when you're at mommy's house, that's what you're learning about. And it's okay for mommy and daddy to disagree, and we can agree to disagree. And so teach them the concept of agreeing to disagree, and mainly, as I said before, get them off of this whole thing between you and your ex, and get them more into their
Mhm.
karate or ballet lessons or art classes, or hanging out with their friends, or whatever it is they're doing. Their nose can't be in this chaos. It's got to be with the light, where they're feeling that they're growing and progressing and synergizing with other people and sharpening their minds and understanding things like what's the do the right thing to do. I think every child knows that a parent stuffing their throat is just not exactly the right thing, or a parent name calling the parent. They know that that's not a right thing. It doesn't feel right. So please, everyone, take this really seriously. And the people who suffer most are your children. And we do not want our children to have this horrible cognitive dissonance that will destroy their bodies, destroy their minds, and destroy their souls. So please, please, please put your children number one. So thank you so very much for listening. And if you like the show, please subscribe to the channel, and please feel free to call in for a free consultation. Thank you all, and good night, everybody.